Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Words, Images, and Worlds. Joining me on this episode is comics creator, author Matthew Manning. Matthew, thanks for joining the show, the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. It had been on my list for a while now to talk with you. I know that you had reached out and were kind enough to share some written responses on a blog that I've done for a while, that I've done since 2017. But nice to Zoom with you, Zoom to Zoom, and talk about a few things as well.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Readers out there might know you from the Batman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles worlds, lots of shared universe work, some of the Marvel titles that you've done, as well as there's something out there about barfing unicorns that
Oh,
some
yeah.
readers might know as well.
Yeah, I did a six-book series for Capstone called Xander and the Rainbow Barfing Unicorns, which was a fun little chapter book series.
Yes, yeah. So those are definitely out there, and educators might recognize those from school libraries and book fairs and all sorts of wonderful things like that as well. I personally, my take on your work is through the comics side. I've been a Batman fan for a long time, and judging from your office space, it kind of seems like you might be a Batman fan as well. Just getting that
Yeah.
impression.
Yeah, the '89 Michael Keaton movie kind of ruined my life. That was when I decided go veer right into Batman. There's no going back. So, yeah, I've been collecting Batman stuff ever since, comics and everything else, really. And it's what once people find out that you collect Batman, that's all you get for every holiday or birthday from then on.
True enough. I have that story as well. The 1989 Batman movie it just grabbed me right then. So it has a special place in my heart, as does the animated series. So I'm always excited to talk to people that are connected to that world. And I know you've done work in the Batman, kind of the animated style meets Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles world, which was also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was like a year later. So that was also part of my childhood as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up with both, so getting to write that crossover that kind of combined both my childhood favorites, it was a lot of fun. Doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, you get to kind of treat the world of two things that you love in a way that overlap.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did a we did a director's cut for issue 1 of Batman Turtles, and they asked me if I wanted to write anything for it, and I wrote a little piece that talked about my secret origin of becoming a Batman fan from being a Turtles fan, because I was a big fan of the Turtles cartoon. I'd always loved Batman since I was really little. But when the Turtles came out, I started collecting all this stuff, and then my family and I took a trip to New York City. And when we were there, we went up in the Empire State Building, and I don't know, I still don't know this to this day where my dad parked our this green van from Ohio. It was somewhere parked in New York City that it shouldn't have been, and it was broken into while we were up in the Empire State Building. And we came back down, and they had stolen my entire duffel bag of Ninja Turtles figures, and I was
Oh,
just heartbroken. But my Batman toys had not been stolen. They were in a different part because I'd brought all this apparently for this road trip from Ohio. I really needed it. So from that point on, I was just like, all right, I guess I'm just collecting Batman. So it was my
that's
tragic origin.
a I mean, that's a Batman oriented kind of like busting into the car in the city kind of thing. Wow, yeah, yeah, and of course you really you needed all of those through the trip to tell the
Oh
stories,
yeah.
the action figures, and all of those things.
I'm sure. I'm glad. I don't think I brought all my turtles, but then the ones that I hadn't brought were like these very obscure, a couple of the villains I didn't even feel like playing with. So I was probably stuck with like, the most, like the, what is it, Ace the Duck, or, a couple of these characters that
I
didn't quite,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah.
The one that was like a human fly, or was that He-Man? It all sort of
Oh,
runs
there was
together.
yeah, Baxter Stockman was a turtle villain with, that was a fly too. So,
Um, so I was gonna ask why comics, but I think we've kind of touched on that just a
yeah.
little bit. Was it what initially connected you to comics? Was it the film? It was Michael Keaton to blame for that? Was it something else?
Well, I'd always been drawn to like comic strips, so that's originally what I thought I wanted to do when I was a little kid. I wrote lots of my own comic strips and things, and I loved things like Calvin and Hobbes and Far Side and a few strips like that. And then, but yeah, when the Batman movie came out, I switched to comics, and we had a couple comics that my parents have bought for me now and then. There was an issue of Batman and the Outsiders that I read over and over and over, and once the movie came out, I read it even more times, and that was what really got me into the DC universe and got me into characters. And I read Spider-Man a little bit around that time, and then Ninja Turtles, and so it all became I really wanted to write these comic books rather than comic strips
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
point. So that kind of, but something about the sequential art medium always attracted me. And then after that, I went to college at the School of Visual Arts in New York City and majored in cartooning. And because originally I wanted to write and draw, but when I was there, I realized I got tired of my own stories while I would, because I go through the script so much and I edit and re-edit, and by the time I'm done, I'm kind of like, all right, next project, and then to sit down and then draw it, and I just didn't have the the talent to want to do it more and more. Like I met a lot of artists who were constantly drawing, and that's what they had to do. Like they just were always drawing when they had the opportunity, and that's how I've kind of been with stories. And so I realized, yeah, I should really just focus on the writing aspect of things. And so I interned at DC Comics and kept bugging them until they finally gave me an opportunity over there, and haven't looked back since. So
and how did you kind of hone and craft that writing style?
well, I guess it's just kind of just doing it a lot. Like I always, I'm always trying new things too. So I'm not sure if I'm even settled into a style. I keep changing the way I do things. I try to play with format a lot. Like for instance, we did a Beware the Batman issue where the whole issue takes place from Alfred. Batman's missing, and the whole issue takes place from Alfred's point of view. So it looks
Yeah,
like
I
a
love
first.
that one. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it kind of looks like a first person shooter video game type thing. And that was something that I had to kind of, say, hey, can we do this weird thing? And my editor at the time, Christy Quinn, was like, hey, yeah, sure, that's fine. So that went over well. We actually revisited that kind of style in a Ninja Turtle story I did later on. That I did the same kind of POV, but it was from all the different turtles. They're playing tag on the rooftops as a training exercise. And when they tag each other, it becomes the other turtle's point of view. And we do that through this little short story. So I like doing that. I like I've done a lot of different kind of uh, working with the format, just all the possibilities you can only do in comics, which I really enjoy. Really enjoy like moment to moment panels where it's just like one thing changes and kind of it's really good for timing and humor and even building tension. So I'm always kind of playing with style, and I'm always reading comics. So I'm always like, oh, that's a cool trick this guy did, that sort
Yeah.
of thing. So
No, you can do the visual things so well with comics in a way that, I mean, with prose, I haven't written comics, but the thing of trying to keep in your mind, okay, what is the reader going to think? How do I share this? Versus comics, where you know that some artist somewhere is going to take this thing and cast it out there and
yeah,
share it. So that's definitely unique.
yeah, and I've written a lot of prose. Like I've just finished my 100th prose book, so I've written a lot. From everything from children's books to like these big guidebooks to fiction, and
Mm.
so it is a very different world, and you kind of have to know your way around. Like a lot of people will come to comics from other medium and not really study the art form, and it is very different if you want to get the most out of it. It's not a film script. There's that's one thing that I really am happy I went to art school for, is because I've actually had artists compliment me and never had them really complain about what I'm asking in each panel from some people that'll just start out in comics without any kind of training or any kind of studying. That they'll be like, yeah, and then this character, it's a dramatic reveal as he turns around and picks this up and does, and there's like too many actions. You have to kind of pick and choose where you're going to put things, and you have to change your the camera at in quotes I'm saying, but like the if you do close-ups, when you pan back, like when there's it's a lot of similar terms to like film, but it's a very different I guess the pacing is the most different part, and what you can fit into a thing, what you can ask of your artist, you can't exhaust your artist with like, okay, this is a Times Square shot with 100 people walking around, and then panel 2, and this is a 9-panel page, you know. So, and you get a lot of those. You know, I've seen a lot of scripts over there. When I used to intern at DC Comics, I saw and read a lot of different scripts and saw that, oh, this person must be new to comics, you know, that sort of thing. Because you can ask too much of your artist and tire them out, and I try to keep within a certain number of panels per page, whether or if there's more panels on a page, there'll be a lot more examples of close up on a hand or something, you know. So just to give them, so we can make some of these panels small, and we, you know, to because I've been on the other end and have drawn pages for homework and realized, oh man, I mean, drawing is so much more labor intensive than writing. And the writer has to keep that in mind, because while it's true we don't have to worry about a sci-fi budget or something, we do have to worry about, you know, this artist burning out and not bringing his best energy to it because we're asking way too much per page.
And you have that, I mean, it's 23 pages, but you can really pack, or I guess 20 something. You can really pack a lot in those.
Yeah, you can't. And I often ask for a lot of panels on, I mean, I try to stay with, my average is about 5 to 6 panels per page, which is more than most comics these days, just because I have a lot of story I try to tell in that amount. You know, I'm depending on some artists. I'm working with one artist right now who prefers no more than 4 panels a page. I'm working with another artist who only wants 3 panels a page, which is a real challenge. And so I'm trying to pack in as much information, as much storytelling as I can in that, but it does cause some problems, you know, if you have to stick to something that rigid often. So I try to make it so we're both happy, find a happy medium, because it is a collaboration. And that's an interesting thing about comics is I'm always, if I know who my artist is, I love talking to them beforehand, chatting and saying, oh, if you have a better idea, you know, let me know. Let's go that direction. Like if you're more excited about drawing a particular panel this way, you know, that sort of thing. But if, you know, my only problem is I've worked with a couple artists where it's like, oh, they just didn't feel like drawing the thing that needs to be drawn for the story, the sake of the story. So if it's in service of the story, I have no problem with changes, you know. But if it's something that will detract from the story or hurt it in some way, it's like, oh, did we need to make that change? You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And I remember in the Batman Adventures, the Batman series that paired with the television show, there was a contest that they ran for a while where, first of all, shout out to letter columns, because that was such a cool fan thing. But if your letter got chosen, you know, you got a piece of art from.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that was cool.
If you look carefully in those issues, I have 2 letters printed around that time in Batman Adventures. So you can actually find that. When I don't know how old I was, but I was pretty young. And I was just very happy to get stuff printed. I think I had like 4 or 5 letters total printed when I was younger. And
yeah.
So it was such a big thing just to see it at that point. And
right. The day I made Wizard magazine, I was like, hey, my letter's in there.
Yeah.
You know, you feel like an author. It's like, oh, hey.
Yeah, I always wish Wizard was still around, just because, like, especially when I did Batman Turtles, I'm like, oh, I would have totally been interviewed in Wizard magazine. You know, that's like a jump of the goal, and it's like, oh, it's not there anymore.
Yeah. Excuse me. They would always do those art pieces. They would share those out, and I remember writing, by the way, if you choose my letter, and I would have like some complicated, like every character I loved, you know, turn around, doing this, doing that. But you're also, so you've written with kind of the Bruce Timm animated style. You've done The Batman, which was, I think, the one in like the early 2000s. You've done Beware the Batman. So you've kind of been in a lot of those different animated universes, and I love how your work speaks across those brands, worlds, licenses, whatever you want to call it, in that way.
Yeah, that's one of those. I just kind of fell into doing those because it was easier to break in at that point in those type of books. And then there had the Johnny DC line, and it was easier to do that. So my first 2 issues were for Justice League Adventures, with it, which was the tie into the Justice League cartoon, and then that just kind of went to The Batman, which was The Batman Strikes, was what that title was. And then I did some Legion of Superheroes in the 31st Century, which was the Superboy or Superman in the Legion cartoon. It was tied into that. And I even did some Looney Tunes and Scooby Doo over the years too. So kind of just been whatever I could do,
Yeah,
whatever they
yeah.
let me do. It was, comics, and that kind of segued into working on, once they found out I knew a lot about the, comics themselves, where I started writing these guidebooks and encyclopedias and just, that sort of thing. So, and even I've done even stuff in the Bruce Timm universe, for like chapter books as well. Like Capstone did a
Mhm.
lot of those, so I started doing books like that. Or we did a couple of books that were hybrids, so they would be like um, chapter books, but instead of illustrations, there'd be a comic page. So it was
Yeah.
kind of an interesting take on that. We did that for Scooby Doo and for Batman, which was a lot of fun. And that's how I got into doing some weird chapter books like the Xander series, or
Mhm.
just a little bit everything for them.
Yeah, yeah, I love those as a young reader because I could spend some time with the comics and then, oh, I've got this prose novel and, kind of work my way up. I eventually did there was an Indiana Jones set of novels. So some of those books
Oh,
got pretty big in that expanded universe kind of thing. But I've seen those. I love that you have those out in the world as well. Um, so I guess looking back, I mean, you said you have 100, you said 100 prose novels.
yeah,
Um,
well, I finished they're not all novels, but they're like prose book, like and those range from children's books to like my most recent, the number 100th is a Batman and the Multiverse book.
mhm,
It's going to be
mhm.
coming out this October from Inside Editions, and it's kind of like a guidebook to all Batman, and I think it's 60 some different universes. And when they first approached me with that, when they said, "Oh, can we? Do you think there's enough multiverse?" Because they did a Spider-Man one, and is there enough for Batman? And so I made a list of like 200 some, and they're like, "Okay, that's enough. Let's stop." And that was just the ones we're allowed to use. We weren't allowed to use the movie universes or anything. Which, if you look in even just in Batman number 900 that just came out, they kind of jumped around universes and actually got to, now the license is a little broader for the comics at least, so they can do the Keaton universe and they can do the Adam West universe, so all the different things like that. Our book will just touch on the comic books, so mostly the old Elseworld imprints, or
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of alternate future stories and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was a fun little corner I haven't written a book about yet, which was nice.
I'm excited for that because I was also an Elseworlds fan growing up, so I'll be looking forward to that. Any other upcoming projects or anything that rises to the surface of your works that you'd like to mention for listeners out there as well, as the sort
Well,
of the pride and joy.
yeah. As for my like favorite projects, one of them's out of print now, unfortunately. But there's a book for Batman fans. I did a book called The Batman Files, which was this journal, like what if Batman kept a scrapbook about his entire career, and that was a real labor of love for me. We got to put in everything we could think of, and kind of tried to make all the continuities fit into one. Kind of taking that Grant Morrison approach, like he was doing at the time in the comics when that was coming out, and so we got to touch on the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, but all make it like kind of this, one continuous story of Batman's life. And then we got to do a sequel, The Superman Files, which was a lot of fun too. It was kind of written, but that one was from Brainiac Five's point of view and the future of the Legion of Superheroes, looking back at Superman and writing about Superman's life. So those are two I love when people get a hold of, just because most people enjoy those. I think the how much fun we had working on them really kind of shines through in that. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot of other, like I've always really enjoyed my working in the comic format probably the most. So the Batman Turtles was probably the most fun I've had writing a comic. And yeah, and for upcoming, I just finished today. I just sent the script in. I'm doing a 6 issue arc at first, and then we'll see about future stories for Storm King Comics, which is John Carpenter and his wife Sandy King. It's their comic book imprint.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't think we're allowed to, and I don't think I can announce any more specifics about it, but that will be coming out hopefully this fall. Might be pushed back later. We'll have to see how things work out, but I'm really excited about that. It's an idea that I had originally written about 13 years ago, and it was at that point I'd sold it to DC to Wildstorm, the Wildstorm imprint, and we had some issues with an artist. that just failed to do anything really. He literally didn't draw a single page for over a year. And at that point, there was all these problems. Then the Wildstorm got folded into DC, so the comic never got a chance to come out. And a while back, I got regained the rights to it. So it just came out finally as an opportunity to do it for this company. So I'm really excited about that. I did have to go in and edit a lot of things because people are using flip phones, and things like that
Oh,
because it was
right.
written so long ago. But so I went back and redid all the dialogue and added some extra scenes and some, just kind of made it how a comic would look if I was writing it today. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one. It's kind of like a little sci-fi thriller type story. So that should be. I'm just hoping to get in a lot of hands when it comes out.
That's got to be another punch on your cool card to get to write and create for a John Carpenter imprint. I mean,
Oh
talk
yeah.
about your 80s and 90s lore. I mean, yeah, that's cool. I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a huge John Carpenter fan, and I don't even think I've told him yet. So I think he's gonna freak out when he finds that it's that for that particular imprint. So that should be
It,
fun.
it sounds like you're really busy. It sounds like you're
Yeah, right now this is
scripting a
I've
lot.
actually we around the pandemic and stuff, things really slowed down. There were a lot of publishers that just weren't hiring. There were a lot of editors I worked with for years that just stopped working at the publishers that I worked for them at.
Mm.
So those are, a lot of clients that were gone like overnight. So there was a little bit of slow time. This year's been going really fast. I just finished another book for Marvel recently too. Which will be like a fun little, uh, another kind of, uh, I don't know, maybe not really a guidebook, but something interesting. I can't really talk about it, but that'll be a
Gotcha.
fun project. And then talking hopefully about maybe some more other comic things. I just did a little tiny short story for DC, which is a lot of fun, in the DC versus Vampires universe. So I did a little story in issue 4 of it was a Black Lightning story, which was just a little shortened, and it was, I think, DC versus Vampires All Out War. So there's like 2 titles about it, and that was a lot because I'd never got a chance to write Black Lightning. And as I was saying, the Outsiders are such a huge part of my childhood. That was a huge deal. Just an 8-page story. I was more excited than some of the books I've written. I was like, yeah, this is fun. Just making. And even though it was in like this other crazy universe, that was another one that draws to it because you can kind of do a lot with one of these brand new Elseworlds type stories.
Yeah, that's cool. And to get to write characters you love. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the dream, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's been a lot of fun. Every once in a while, I forget how unique it is to to write comics. I've been doing it for 20 years and things, or just writing these books and comics. And I remember I was talking with a friend, and he was like, "Have you ever thought about how like we love Ninja Turtles growing up, and you're like, yeah, I want to write them, and then you're actually doing it?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is." It's refreshing when you look at it that way. When I'm looking at it like, I got this deadline, or I have these changes to make that I don't want to make. All the things that happen in day to day, work. And so that was kind of something I try to keep in mind, when this or any of I did a 12 issue run on Marvel Action Avengers, and that was a lot of fun. Something I never thought I would be, working in that corner uh, of the universe, which is an interesting thing too. But
Otherworldly in a way, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, that's one of the things too about jumping from even different genres and different medias and different characters is like every time it kind of reignites your excitement for projects like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just throw myself into the Avengers world and just read tons of these Avengers comics that I liked as a kid, and I loved a lot of Iron Man too. So you'll in that arc, there's a lot of Iron Man villains that come up. There's a lot of like Iron Man specific things that happen, which is fun. And my artist is a big Hulk guy, and we didn't get to the Hulk till issue 7, I think, and that was, or maybe even later than that. I wrote an arc specifically for him, and at that point he left the book, and I was like, so we got to draw him on the cover, and that was it. But that's John Samariva, and he left to do Neverlanders with Tom Taylor. And I was like, oh, you're doing a creator-owned project with one of the biggest writers in comics. You can't fault him for leaving the book for that. And he stayed on for covers with us. So but he's also my artist for the Batman Turtles, which is why it's so fun and lively. And he melded the styles from the Batman the Animated Series and the 2012 Turtles universe just so well. That's one of the things everybody compliments me on that book when I see people in real life, like, wow, he just did the style so good. I'm like, yeah, that I had nothing to do with that. That's all John.
It did come together well, but I mean, the story is there too and merges really well. So
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I had a lot of fun actually on a wall you can't see here. John gave me the inked artwork actually. So it's John Parsons inked artwork of a page from Batman Turtles, which I have framed on a different wall over here. And it's there's a sequence where Michelangelo puts his hand through the portal for the first time, the portal that connects their universes, and they're like, "What do you feel?" And he's like, I feel a gargoyle, like a really angry gargoyle." And then you just see Batman's fist punching through the portal because Michelangelo is feeling his face.
right.
And that was a lot of fun. I really like that gag, so I'm glad they gave me that page.
Yeah, that is, and it just captures like that balance of the tones so well.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of the fun that I was discovering while writing it, was just these, even though they're both those shows, the 2012 Nickelodeon Turtle Show was just as dark and shadowy as the Batman animated series show, but it was done in a different way. It was 3D rendering and stuff, but they did these really cool 2D background effects. It was a really good show, and the fact that they took place in similar universes except the main characters were so different was what really made it fun, just because you could play out. I mean, Batman's such the straight man to these like eccentric. All four of the turtles are way sillier than Batman, even Leonardo, or even the more serious. So that was a lot of fun. I just kind of wished I had more pages for a lot of it, which is one of those things you just like, oh, here's another idea we could do. Here's something else. Like there was I actually had so much fun writing the Joker and Harley from the animated series, that dynamic. I actually added a page and then had to cut a page somewhere else because I was just having, and it didn't really service the plot much. So something I normally don't do, but I'm like, this is too much fun. I can do this little gag here. And so I added a little bit. But yeah, that series was just a pure joy, because it was very much, and like there was a lot of stuff just for fans. There's a lot of Easter eggs, and I'm a fan that I'm directing it to, so it's like writing for what I would have liked to see for those. So yeah, that was fun experience.
Yeah, very cool. And I'll be looking forward to the Batman Multiverse Elseworlds exploration as well. So
Yeah,
lots
and
of
I think it's even, I don't remember, I think it's called, oh, I should know. Something about Tales of the Multiverse, or Dark, I can't remember. I never get to name these when it comes to the guidebooks a lot, but you can pre-order, I think it on Amazon already. That they might even have some, I don't know if the sample pages are up yet, but I've been seeing a lot of the artwork and it's really cool looking. And so we're doing an all, like it's all full of, they're not using images from the comics, so it's all new artwork through the whole book.
wow, very cool.
It'll be a neat one. But
It's been a favorite of mine for some time, that whole like fracturing of universes and the Elseworlds. So definitely looking forward to that. We'll be adding that to not this shelf. This is the digital shelf, but the classroom shelf, my shelf, definitely so.
oh, great.
So anything before we wrap up the episode, anything that you want to direct readers to? I know you have a website, so I'll be sure and link that in the description. And I don't want to keep you because you probably have another script that you're going to be working on sometime soon.
Yeah, well, I turned in my script today, so I'm good. I might even take tomorrow off. The lawn needs some serious attention. That happens when we I get into these projects, but yeah, then it's going to be on to the next thing I'm also currently working on is a 6-issue comic that is it's for this company that does school visits for science for kids. And they do all these presentations. And so the company's called High Touch High Tech, and they're on like Royal Caribbean cruise lines. They do all these. It's this big company that actually happens to be based here in Nashville, which is how I met them. And I'm working on a comic for them with my friend Matt Lux, who has done a lot of books. He does books for First Second, and Yeah, he's Time Museum is one of his.
Hmm.
I think he's done two of those now. I think he's working on the third one maybe.
And
But
Prunella's the one that's
yeah,
really beautiful book. Yeah.
but yeah, we've Lex and I went to college together at SVA, and so I was like, oh, his style would be absolutely perfect for this. So it's a very big change, shift from the horror sci-fi stuff I'm doing for Storm King, but it's going to be 6 issues as of now, and it's going to have 3 experiments that kids can do with stuff they find around their house. So it's a fantasy story, which is because my theory is that kids don't like to be aware that they're learning, so it's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
this is a
Too
fun fantasy
didactic. Yeah.
story, yeah, with like alternate dimension type feel to it. And then we have some like kind of interesting creatures and things, but the idea is each issue has 3 science experiments that the main characters do within the course of the story, and the kids can just use household materials and do those experiments at home, which is it's been a lot of fun. I try out all the that experiments firsthand with my daughters. So I have a 12-year-old and 9-year-old, and we've been having a lot of fun, like trying to figure out, oh no, like I've had to adjust things because I'm like, this isn't quite working, So we're doing a lot of those, and then Matt's just making it great with the comic itself. He's finished the first issue so far. He just sent the cover today, so it's been really fun to see that, and I've finished the script for issue 2, so I have a long ways to go with that one. But it's kind of like, I'm just making sure Matt always has pages. So as long as I'm ahead. Oh, and then I'm also working on, I forgot about that. I'm doing for other things to look out for. It's not going to even come out till I think January of 2025. But we're doing a graphic novel history of Asheville, because I live here in Asheville, North Carolina,
Hmm.
and been here for a decade now. And I just became obsessed with the history and the architecture. And whenever I like something, I tend to make it into something that's work. So now I'm making it a job, and we're going to be I'm working with the local artist Jarrett Rutland, and we're doing a 100-page graphic novel for the History Press, and it's going to be the History Press's first graphic novel they've ever done. And I think our town is this interesting little weird arty mountain town, so I think it's a good
Cool
place
thing.
to start with, yeah, for that kind of book. And so we're having a lot of fun with that. We received a grant from the Preservation Society in here in Asheville, and so we've been able to get started with it, and it's going to be I'm hoping that's going to be a lot of fun. We're approaching it a way for all ages, so adults that know the history are going to get to actually see it unfold, where you can't normal books like that are collects of old photos or postcards. So you actually get to experience it firsthand, and the art has just been fantastic so far. It's fully painted. It's going to be black and white, but fully painted, and it's really pretty.
Very cool. Very cool. And you can throw in Easter eggs for Thomas Wolfe and Andy McDowell. I mean, all sorts of wonderful things.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're touching on a little bit of everything. Thomas Wolfe's definitely in there, and I'm trying to think. We'll just have to see how much room we get. Every time I am focusing on a scene, it just gets longer and longer because I don't just want to tell the dry history. I want to tell fun little stories about things that happen, in these places when they're in their heyday, and why the city is like it is. So I'm gonna have to cut out a lot of stuff because all the sections I've written so far are longer than they were supposed to be. And then my artist keeps coming up with these great ideas. Like we're gonna do some really cool like map sections that are gonna be kind of like these lively, maps of how the town used to look, and that through different decades. So it's it's going to be a really fun book, I think, when we're done. But his deadline's not even till summer of 2024, so we've got a ways to go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, very cool. Lots of cool things. Yeah, we have lots to look forward to. I'll make sure to link the website in the
Oh yeah,
description. And
I haven't. That's a problem. My website falls by the wayside every time, so it's not as up to date as I'd like it to be. I've been threatening to start a blog on there for years, I think.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I've got to get back into that. I'm hoping to get to that point where I'm starting to do regular, like maybe a newsletter that I also post on my website. So that's a goal for hopefully this fall. We'll see.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I know that by then you'll have written several other things, and thank you so much for taking some time out of everything that you're working on to talk with us, and so glad to share about your work. And I'll have to have you back on at some point to talk about the Asheville book and some other things.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks so much.